Straight from the edge, it's time for some daytime drama. Over on Y&R, Summer, she's starting to get really worried about her mom. Phyllis hasn't obviously checked in with anybody since she's been kidnapped. And she ends up asking Devon to let her into the athletic club room to see if Phyllis was there. And of course she found all the stuff because she's actually not left on her own accord. And she knew something was off about her keys being there and makeup and whatnot. And so she called up her dad, Nick, and got him onto the fact that this is not like her to be missing and for this long extended period of time. And they're both, really more worried than they were a couple days before. And so Nick, of course, tries to question Adam about it a little bit to see, since he was the last person to be seen with her, what he knew, and said, basically like, if I find out that you had anything to do with her being gone, all bets are off. And really nice protective there over his ex-wife. And even though he's upset with things she's been doing, he's going to protect her all the way. And letting Adam know that was great. And of course Adam's trying to play it off because he knows that Kevin is actually the one that has kidnapped her. So he's trying to not reveal that to Nick. But anyway, Summer, she ends up having this distraction because of her mom, and so she's not really focused completely. And Kyle's kind of like laying down a ton of bricks on her, like, for not being focused. And he has this in his head a little bit what Lola had said about her being, like a emotional vampire. And so he's trying to not get drawn in. And so he's actually kind of really rude to Summer. And he doesn't know what's going on, but he's just cold and not being a very good friend. And obviously he's trying to not be in a relationship with her because he's trying to be with Lola exclusively, obviously, and not have emotional connection so much to Summer. But it was really cold, and Lola luckily had seen that happen, and so she's kind of having a little bit of a change of heart in that whole thing, because she'd said that to Kyle, and maybe he overreacted a little bit with Summer. And so she goes over and she's trying to figure out what's going on, and sees that she's worried about her mom being missing, and kind of starts to make a little bit of a connection with her. And obviously she's indebted to her over the liver, and so she's starting to realize what she's gained out of all of this, and trying to pay it back a little bit to Summer in whatever way she can. And that was nice to see Lola pick up on that and do something about it. So, of course, Kevin's trying to use Phyllis's leverage to get Chloe back from Adam, and he's very sure that's what happened to her. Of course, Chloe's, presumed dead by everybody, but we know that was all set up by Victor to let her live out with Kevin in Portland. And so it looks like the shooter on Adam probably was Chloe. I missed one in there, so maybe they did talk about it, but he ends up really pressing more and Kevin, and then Adam does say, basically like, I do have Chloe, and you can't let her come at me again. She's already come at me twice. She tried to blow me up at the lodge 2 years ago, three years ago, and then I guess the gun thing. So you've got to get her under control, and but give up Phyllis first. And Kevin reluctantly says that he'll do it. And then he says, well, wait, you can't leave town right away. I need your services and skill, because he's a hacker too, so he wants to use Kevin, and we'll see how that all plays out. But Ray is rightly worried about all of this Adam stuff, because Adam is revealing to Sharon that he has feelings for her still, and it didn't work out with Chelsea coming back with Connor. So, he's emotionally not sure what to anchor himself to, and Sharon's the one person that brought him back to town and was trying to get him to remember things. So he's emotionally attaching himself to her based off their past too. So, and he basically is rude to her about Ray, and she puts him basically in his place. But when she goes back to Ray, she's trying to forget what the feelings Adam's dredging up in her, and Ray picks up on it right away. But he sees him come back again, and they hug or whatnot, Adam and Sharon, and he's very upset by the whole thing because he knows the manipulation, and under normal circumstances nobody would be around Adam considering what he's done, but obviously in the past he's made up a lot of what he's done with people and helps Sharon through her troubles. So she is a little taken aback by Ray being so emotional about it, but he's also going through what happened with Mia, and so he's got a soft wound there still that's not completely healed, and she realizes it, and she ends up letting him. He runs off, but she's not happy about it because she wants to work through the problem, and Mariah helped her. Mariah does a really good job of reminding Sharon of all of her core personality and the things that she values about other people and whatnot. And so, and Sharon does that back for her daughter Mariah as well. But she was able to remind Sharon that, all this stuff you're trying to help with Adam, Ray's gonna turn around and whatnot, but to start to think about how Sharon would normally go about. We talk through the problem and we don't try to bury it or whatnot. And just a really good scene how there are a couple scenes how they put that all together, and then Sharon talked to Ray and voiced her worries about it, and saying that he said, well, Adam is, I can see that this is a threat to us and whatnot and different people, and she allowed him to express that without having too much defense about it, which was really good to see them try to work through it. And Ray is thinking about a very logical approach and doesn't know all the nuances that they do, and so it's just nice to see that dynamic working between all of them. So Nick gives the keys to Dark Horse to Adam because he's just like, you're not getting Christian, and here's the company, you leveraged it. And he did try, Nick tried reaching out to Jack for a loan, and Jack's like, I'm completely over leveraged myself with the whole thing happening at Jabot, and he says, I can't do it right now. He obviously would help Nick, but he tries to appeal to Nick, saying basically, he's trying to not put Nick on defense, but basically saying this is his son and he's trying to rebuild, and you guys are family and you can't really escape each other considering his problems with Billy and whatnot. And so he's trying to appeal to that side of Nick, but Nick's having none of it because he's in that frame of mind of I must defend this position, rightly so, considering everything Adam is doing in the present specifically, and Adam isn't going about it in a way to have some kind of compromise. He's doing everything to push everyone's buttons to get what he wants. And so Nick is not going to put up with that. So he gives him the keys, and it looks like they might play it out where Adam's running Dark Horse for a little while till Nick figures out how to get it leverage back. And Nick, of course, goes to talk to Victor, saying, like, you owe me on this. You brought Adam into town. You got to fix this. And, of course, Victor's like, after all, you guys had sued me, and then you'd created Dark Horse and stolen all this information from Newman Enterprises, like, why should I help you? And, Nick and Victor are both right in a certain sense. Victor isn't taking the more fatherly, stance, in some sense that Nick is. But obviously Victor's trying to help in a fatherly way with Adam and, all of his children. And he is holding something against Nick that they thought they had kind of basically dealt with in some sense. But, you can understand what Victor is coming at it from, but Nick's like, why can't we just stick on the topic of the current issue versus stuff in the past that we have tried to work through already? And dredging that up doesn't help us with the current situation, but Victor's going to take advantage of the situation. So a little bit further ahead, Abby, Victoria, Nick, and Adam are summoned to, Newman Enterprise offices, because Victor and Nikki are going to tell them about the red blood cell disorder that Victor found out he had. And so they're all standing outside the office and talking with each other, like, what's this all about? And then they open the door and, they walk in like they're going to get their caning. That was pretty funny. And then, of course, Nick's like, what's going on with all this? And he's thinking it's about Adam and all the disruption and him, Victor trying to give the reins to Adam. And then Victor says he doesn't like Nick's attitude, and it's just, really, come on, like, we're trying to deal with this here. But so they tell them, and of course the first go-to, Victoria goes, it's all about the business, and that she's the heir apparent based off rightly so, all the stuff she's done at work. And she's saying it as to take workflow off of Victor so that he can focus on getting better. And of course Abby just boom right on that, like, of course, taking the opportunity to take reins of power and everything. And Victoria gets in defensive mode about it, and then Adam says basically she's correct, Victoria's correct about all this because of his way of looking at business. And then of course you got Nick over there who just automatically knows the situation and realizes that the main concern is over Victor's health. And he loves his dad, and he wants to do anything he can to help him through this. And the business stuff is irrelevant. It's about family. And Abby falls more in that category too, when she pointed out about the business stance, that's not what's important here. And she's the one that got this whole thing rolling when she saw all that stuff from Nate about Victor. So those two, they're really going to be falling on the side of trying to help him through dealing with the disease. And Nick privately talked with Victor after there was an exclusive time that Adam talked with Victor, and Victor is saying that he's the heir apparent and he wants the business to be secure in case something happens to him, even though he's going to fight completely to get through it. And Adam's like, I don't even care about this. And Victoria's out there all upset outside, thinking that Adam's going to come swoop in and take it all. And Abby's just kind of like saying that, not relishing in it, but just saying, like, really, like, you have done all of this for our dad, and you're not seeing that you're still going to be outplayed here, and you should just move on to something else. And it's, good sisterly advice, considering she went and worked at Dark Horse with Nick, where everyone, has an opportunity there to shine. And so Nick gets his time with Victor and Nikki, and so Nick is saying, basically that he loves him, he loves Victor, and that, stepping back, remember when Victor had basically been in a coma after what happened with JT, Victoria was like, well, Dad wouldn't want to be like this, and we should basically pull the plug. And of course, Nick was the one that was there by Victor's side saying, we'll fight this all the way, and that the most concern is with Victor and keeping him alive, and he loves his dad. And so coming to this conversation, Nick is saying, I can see that it's about family and each other. And of course, Victor is coming at it from the standpoint of his legacy and all of this sort of thing, and he doesn't want to have weakness. And Nick is able to recognize his own weaknesses and weaknesses in others and protect people. And Victor is trying, the way since he was an orphan, he's always tried to make sure to be a fortress where nothing can get in and damage him. And both are valid ways of looking at things in a certain way, but Nick is trying to say, at the end of the day, you have this amazing family that you built, and we can work through all of this in a different kind of way than basically you had a start to your life. And Nikki's seeing all this and her son making this case, and at the end of the day, Nick is right, and he leaves, and Nikki, saying let's go home, and Victor's looking at his portrait, and he's looking back, reflecting back on himself and all the strength from his past that he's drawing off of to face this going forward, and just this muscular, like, kind of like, I can do this. And she walks in the room for a second, sees him, and he's trying to mentally prepare himself for the battle ahead. And Nick's going to be at his side along with Abby, and Adam and Victoria will do their part to aid in the other half of that. But it was an amazing thing to watch all these actors pull together storylines from going way, way, way back. And it was just a totally epic moment. And they had the music cues going right. Just talent. This is why this is the #1 daytime drama. Not taking away from the other shows, but there's just a certain quality of stepping it up at certain moments that really shines, where the writing and everything comes together. And amazing. So Devon bought out Elena's debt for medical school, and she found out about it, and she was like, how could you do this to me? And he's kind of taken aback, thinking he did a very kind thing to help her out, because she'd had this debt around her neck, and it's limiting her decisions and ability to be free to make her life. And he's taking cues from what Neil said in his will, and paying it forward. Devon, obviously had all this help from Neil adopting him, and then finding out Mrs. Chancellor was his grandmother, and then her in her will giving him everything. Chancellor Enterprise becoming a billionaire, and so he's seen that if he can help people that are having this thorn in their foot, he's going to do it. And she does kind of realize this, and she wanted to run, and because she feels like now she feels indebted to him, basically, and she thought that they were in this a new relationship where they were equals, and she feels that balance is upset now, and he says that you know, obviously you don't owe me anything as far as a relationship. This is just about me helping you, and you deserve so much. And so she does end up not leaving, and she doesn't like the power imbalance and feeling like he has an ability to affect so many things in her life and other people's that she's not quite sure about it, but she's willing to set it aside for the time being, hoping that he understands her a little bit better. And just an amazing setup to going forward for those two, because when you have a power imbalance on either side, the other person feels in a more position where they don't have the latitude to make decisions that are free of that, I guess, power dynamic. So it's just going to be very interesting to see where they can take this, because Devon certainly was doing it from a position of helping somebody, not out of the fact that he's falling for her. And so she hopefully will recognize that, and they can move forward where that isn't, the power dynamic isn't part of their relationship to a detriment. But it's going to be a learning curve. Over on GH, you know, Jason met up with Chase at the hospital to see how far, you know, an update on Shiloh, basically, like, have you taken him to jail yet? And Chase unfortunately had to tell Jason that Harmony had confessed to Shiloh's drugging of Sam and the other girls, and that he had to let him go. And Jason's just like, we went to the law to deal with the situation, and now they're, you know, fumbling the football. And he goes back to Sonny, and they're having a conversation about the whole thing, and Chase ends up coming by again, and he basically told them, you know, he was pleased that he didn't have to deal with Jason over the assault on Shiloh, you know, a few weeks back, and he doesn't want to put him in jail for killing Shiloh if that happens. And so he's saying basically to back down and keep following the process. They're going to get Shiloh. There's plenty of people out there that are invested in trying to bring down the cult, and they're working at it from all different angles. Just be patient. And of course, Jason's just all jacked up, like hot, and Sonny has to stop him, and he reminds him, like, I can't afford to have you go out there being hot, making loose decisions, and getting yourself arrested for this. This loser is going to get taken care of. Don't take yourself down with him. And he reminded him, in not so many words, that you're stone cold and you got to be cool about this. And basically, like, Shiloh will be dealt with one way or another. And so just keep calm. And he kind of reinforced what Chase said. And, you know, don't be getting arrested here. Nice to see. So Kristina also is having just a lot of problems dealing with the fact that she was manipulated, and she feels that essentially she's been hacked in a certain sense. And how could this happen to her, where she was so easily, she feels duped into Shiloh's game. And of course, Shiloh's using all of these techniques that he's telling the truth, but at another level, he's using that to manipulate people. So he's bypassing their firewalls, and essentially in their mind of trust. And so she hopefully will start to see through that it's not actually something wrong with her, and that her true self isn't in question. It's basically that circumstances kind of unfolded to where she was, taken over in the cult thinking, and but now she has more tools in her belt to see things like this going forward in her life. So it's very nice how that all played out, and Sonny, as her father, is trying to say, he loves her, unconditionally, and that to not worry about these things, and that, think with your heart about all this, and that you've accepted help, and don't see, that's the thing, starting to beat yourself up about it is not the way to go about it. You accept it to some level that it occurred, and then you move on, and just they're going about this the right way, and I think Neil's going to reinforce all of that, and help her with these trust things of other people, and then of herself, and so just working that really nice. Shiloh went, so of course he gets released, and he goes straight over to Charlie's, and he gets right up in everyone's face. It seems like Sam was there, and different people were there, Lucas, whatnot, and Julian, of course, gets right up in his face, just maybe like six inches to a foot, and it's like, move on. You're not. This is my business establishment. Move on. And Shaw's like, all right. But he basically was trying to goad people into anything, and say, you can't catch me, and his tendrils are all over the place, and he can get out. Carly is trying to appeal to her brother Lucas, like, why did you go to Julian for help? And it's his father, so he has kept him at bay for a long time, considering all of Julian's past, but he felt that it was the time Julian's essentially proved himself to everyone, that he's able to do a more tactful way of helping people instead of causing more problems than good. And so Julian, of course, had gotten Sam to help too with switching out the papers on the Willow's adoption, so Carly's upset though with Lucas that that Lucas didn't come to Carly and Sonny instead of Julian. Julian sees this and he's like, what's going on? And Lucas is kind of caught in this position, like trying to defend his dad a little bit, but it's just going to be interesting to see how that plays out, because of course Sonny's also weighing in, like, Julian, step out of this, like, you're going to make more mess, and Julian doesn't have all the context, network of people to handle the whole thing. But in the end, I think Julian's playing a critical part in bolstering different sides that are going to be needed to take down Shiloh. So in the end, I think Julian is going to be a key clutch player, just like Jason and Sonny and Michael, in bringing this about. So, and Chase. So very excited about all that. So Jason also was a little bit upset with D.A. Dawson for stepping down, and her last act was to release Shiloh, and he's like, you basically can't leave us hanging here now that he's released, and you can't just quit. And she's trying to build the case that the department is airtight, and so, but she might try to use some different angles to do it outside of the district attorney's office. So Shiloh is able to, see some different people that are also Donna Day disciples, essentially, that he either had met briefly or whatnot. And there was a nurse that was trying to essentially help him before he was let go. And then he had a records keeping person at another hospital get records for him on Wiley's, allegedly Wiley's birth from Willow. And so you're seeing how this blackmail network and the cult have its tendrils all over the place, and bringing it down. You're thinking that Shiloh is the head of the snake, but he's just one component to this whole thing. And if you martyr him too, in a certain sense, they're still going to continue doing what they do. So you got to figure out who all of these people are, and how this operation works if you're really going to truly bring it down. Otherwise, it'll have the snake will have new heads that pop up down the road, which for plot stuff could be fun for the show. We'll see how far they go with all that. But this all led to Willow getting served by Shiloh on going to court to get information about her son and everything. And Michael was there at the hospital with Willow when she got served. He was walking away and she said her name, and he was trying to say, "Don't say your name." And so anyway, he prior to that, he was trying to help her look outside the problem, outside of herself, and see, don't get trapped in all of the what ifs and whatnot, but try to isolate the things that you can know in the situation and try to deal with the problem to where they can get Shiloh and don't get discouraged. And just he's bringing through all of the ways of thinking that Jason would go about this. I mean, he really is his uncle's I guess the way of thinking. He has the same. And so plus he's got Sonny and Jax as three good role models among others. And so he's trying to bring through all of these things for Willow to see that this can be dealt with. And just amazing scene there. And then of course Shiloh shows up, and Michael just subtly walks in front of Willow to block Shiloh from coming over to her, and then Shiloh just backs off. But just that physical presence and showing protection to her, just amazing. Michael's able to, as an actor, bringing so much to the table, and Willow's doing an amazing job herself. Just loved seeing all that. And then further, Michael talks to Lucy, and he buys out the Donna Day house underneath Shiloh, and then he goes down to Kelly's, I think, and he basically kind of rubs it in his face that he's his new landlord, and you're kicked out, and he's gonna give it to some other women who are abused, something to that extent. And just a nice little zinger there. Love that, good writing, and Michael's just in his full element, and awesome. So, prior to this, Willow was trying to get Diane to essentially hide her records, and Diane's like, I can't do that, and the court can't. This is client privilege, and so you don't worry about it. But of course, she was trying to call Diane later with Michael, and she couldn't get through because of the secretary. And then of course Michael pulls out the phone and has a direct line to Diane to deal with this situation for court. So all that's good. Willow also heads over to the police department to make a case to her mother, which, considering what her mother's done to try to find Willow's child or grandson, and the horrible thing, offering up her daughter to Shiloh when she's probably late teens, early 20s, and all the stuff you find out about the dad being in the cult, and then him dying after leaving, and you find out a lot of this stuff background. So she has a lot of animosity towards what her mom's done, but she comes to her and says, you are in a unique position to take Shiloh down, and don't do this, don't fall on the sword for him. Like, what has he gotten you? Essentially he's no matter what you think about all of the stuff he's teaching, that in the end he is not a good person worthy of your loyalty, and don't sacrifice yourself for him, and we can work through this as mother and daughter, and obviously with connecting with her grandson possibly, or she's keeping that in her mind. So make it water under the bridge. And it was a very nice moment to show Willow's character. And, it probably didn't click into harmony too much, but it might turn into play down the road. But she's willing to walk off to jail or prison or whatever and sentencing. So we'll see how that goes. But so Jordan's putting the pieces together that Curtis did everything in his power to make sure she got the kidney, and she starts playing through her mind how it might have played out, and realizing that the conspiracy needed a ringleader, and that it was most likely Curtis. And she in her mind she could see that it was most likely Curtis, Kevin, Franco, Elizabeth, Finn, and Valerie, and that they'd all need to work in cohesion to make it work properly. So, but she realizes that if it's that airtight, there's most likely no way she can go after them for it. So Kevin does end up waking up, Ryan ends up waking up in the infirmary for the, seems like the psych ward or whatever, and Finn's there, and they essentially get to the point where he realizes his kidney's gone, and he's like, "You stole my kidney," and all this, because it turns out Kevin probably did the whole thing where he signed it over, so Jordan is probably right. But Ryan's just like, "I vow to go after you guys when I get out of here, because nothing's held me," and all this stuff, and he's got the hook hand, and he's still gonna go after him. And Finn's like, "Okay, your little conspiracy theory," and he walks out. But later on, you see someone walking in the room, and it's Nelle, and so she starts to connect with Ryan, looking at him and saying, these people have wronged us, and they realize Carly is a connection that they have of people who've wronged them and are in their sick and twisted mind, and they even stole kidneys from them, and of course her kidney had gone to Jocelyn. Jax had bought it on the black market, basically, and Nelle hasn't ever been able to move past it, and you can understand to some extent, but so they're identifying with each other and thinking that they might come out with some plan, but Nelle is not realizing what a complete utter psycho Ryan is, so he will use her. But the fact is, she might be useful, but to an extent, and then be gotten rid of. So better be careful for her. So Jack is pursuing Ava to be on the cover, despite his reservations, with what happened with Connie, and what happened with Morgan. And he does talk with Carly a little bit about it, saying basically Nina wants this on the cover, and it's a good business decision. But are certain things more important? And they kind of basically get to the realization that by putting her on the cover, the public gets to weigh in a little bit on the situation, and you can show all of these indiscretions of Ava, and make it readily apparent, that she's done some horrible things. And so it sounds like they're going to go forward with it. And of course, Ava sees Carly's reaction, and so she signs up almost immediately to doing it. And anyway, this is going to be a lot of fun. Over on Bold, Thomas is just laying into Flo, just screaming at her to get all the information that she knows about Beth. And Katrina just doing an amazing job with this situation in acting, and very believable feel to all of it, and Thomas too. So just the entire way he's going about it is such like a bully, and he does learn everything to know that she has on how Beth became Phoebe, and he understands all the pieces, and so in his mind he's going back and forth. Should I tell Hope? Should I not? Because it's advantageous to him to be quiet about it, but then he's thinking also, if I tell Hope, she's going to be forever grateful that I was the one who brought the information to her. And so he's like, he's switching on a dime. Just his emotions are all over the place, and it almost seems like with what happened with Caroline, he's using this entire situation to avoid dealing with that and what he's going to do going forward with his son Douglas. And when this all plays out, where the information's out, I think he's going to come to a real awakening on his core self, and just what is he at this point in how he's acted, and come to terms with it. So it's going to be rough for him at the end of all this, but for now he went over to talk to Steffy, and he's going to tell her. He tells Flo, I'm going to tell her. And his sisters, kind of distracted. The babies wake up, Kelly and Phoebe, and so at every turn he's seen how connected she is. And then of course Liam comes in, and he sees how connected they are, and this is ideally what he wants, so that he can have Hope all to himself. And so he's seeing all this, and in his mind he's going to say, and then he changes his mind, and he's back and forth, and then he ultimately decides to leave without telling them, even though Liam's like, what the hell are you doing here rubbing this in my face? And hopefully they picked up on the fact that there was something going on there. But Zoe, Xander, and Flo are, they're thinking Thomas is going to tell, and then they're trying to figure out how they're going to play this all out. And then Wyatt does step in, and they're talking about Beth, and they kind of back it all off, because he's thinking, why are you talking about her right now? And just they were saying how upset and sad they were that Hope and Liam had annulled their marriage. And so he kind of was, okay, I get it, and he leaves. But going forward, he's going to see that both the women he loves in his life, Sally and Flo, both kept secrets from him. And it's going to be hard to see which lie is more damning for him. Because one is talking about, obviously, a marriage that was with Liam and Hope being manipulated. And then on the other, it's his niece being essentially stolen. And so, it's probably going to lean towards he's more upset with Flo than he is with Sally. And if she can get the information out before it blows up, it might help. So we'll see. But of course, Thomas heads back and tells the three of them that he's not telling, and that none of them are telling. And he's pushing around all of his weight, saying, with the company, and he can destroy their lives and put them in prison and all this sort of stuff if they say anything. And of course he gets Zoe right away to say, okay. And then Flo didn't really answer, but made it seem like she was going along with it. And then he moved on to, and her moral compass, there's no way she's going to keep that ultimately. But, and then Xander, who, is the most sure of telling, he tells him that I'll destroy Zoe, and Xander doesn't even care about Forrest or his career there, but he's worried about Zoe ultimately, and he does say essentially that he understands, but there's no way between him and Flo that it's going to come out, and hopefully they're the ones to do it. But it's just Thomas, when it all falls apart, I think he's going to have a real big problem with his actions, and he's winning Hope in the wrong way, and he's not really going to be satisfied with that like the other three in holding the secret. And so hopefully he comes to terms with it, and the four of them, I think, together are going to have the strength to actually tell the truth, and be a united front in bringing the truth out, is probably the way it should go. And you know, I'm excited to see how all the ups and downs of this are going to go, but ultimately that's probably the route that it should go. So, you know, good luck to them. Anyway, keep on researching.